Welcome to the Motor India show, Rajiv. Just a few questions. Primarily, what does ATMA do? I mean, what's the primary role of ATMA and who are its members?
As the name suggests, this is an Automotive Tyre Manufacturers Association. We are an industry body of the companies which make automotive tires in India.
Okay.
And we've been there since 1975. It's almost 40 years now. So it's an industry association of all the large tire companies of India.
Okay, but I also noticed on your website, your members are limited to all the car and bike manufacturers, the tire manufacturers for cars and bikes. But what about off-road and tube manufacturers? I mean, there are quite a few of them, I presume.
Well, most of the large tire manufacturers are also manufacturing the off-road or the OTR tires, as we call them,
That's right. Okay.
which includes the farm tires, the mining segment, the industrial tires. So these are being manufactured by ATMA member companies. Tube manufacturers, there are a number of them who are standalone small companies, if I may say, who are manufacturing tubes and either supplying to the large tire manufacturers or independently, in that space. So they are not members of our association.
So what's the criteria? I mean, one has to be a manufacturer?
Yes, one has to have a manufacturing facility in India. That's the first criteria, and one has to have a certain amount of size and scale in terms of turnover or the product. So it's about 500 crores in terms of turnover, and also to be manufacturing either 100,000 tires annually for the truck and bus category or 2 million passenger car tires. So that sets the membership criteria.
Okay, so makers like Michelin, I realize, not there.
No, they are members.
Okay, they are the members.
Michelin is the last entrant to
Okay,
the
maybe that's
membership
it's not been
fold.
updated on the website.
Yes,
Okay,
perhaps,
okay.
yeah.
So how many members are currently there?
10 in all, which is a fair mix of the homegrown Indian tire companies,
traditional ones,
the
yes.
traditional ones.
Okay.
We also have the global majors now who have set up their plants in India.
Okay.
So it's a balanced combination, if I may say, of Indian companies as well as foreign
So
manufacturers.
the MNCs, which are the ones, I mean, you have Michelin there, which is one of the latest
Yes, we also have Bridgestone, who've been there for very many years now, ever since they set up their operations in India in the last late 1990s. We also have Goodyear, who've been there for very long now, Michelin and Continental.
Okay.
These are the four large global majors, who have a presence in India, a manufacturing presence in India, and who are also our members.
Yokohama doesn't have it.
They have applied for it, and I think if this interview was a month later, then perhaps
Okay.
they could also be into our fold.
They also have a manufacturing.
Yes, they started manufacturing recently in November 14 onwards,
Okay.
and that's what makes them eligible for the membership.
So how is the tire industry doing? I mean, what is the turnover today, and is it primarily because of the growth in the car segment? Is the turnover coming from there, or is it the heavy vehicle segment? Can you just briefly tell
The
us?
industry turnover for the last fiscal 14-15 is approximately 50,000 crores. Most of it is accounted for by the commercial vehicle segment. I would say currently at about 55% or
Okay.
even more. And the next to it would be the passenger car segment, followed by two, three-wheeler, light truck tires, and then the farm tire. Having said that, the share of commercial vehicle segment, which at one time was almost two-thirds, 66% used to come from the CV segment, truck bus tires. Over the years that has declined, and it has paved way for the passenger car segment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then there's been a growth there.
There's been a growth there, yes.
Okay. And also notice that a lot of these Indian tire manufacturers are doing very well, and they've got plants abroad. They have taken over companies abroad. I mean, does this mean that these companies have now finally come of age in terms of financial clout and even technology?
See, for a successful tire company, you have to have the size and the scale. And that's what the Indian tire companies have also realized, that it's important to have a certain size, a scale. And I think once you've achieved that, then the next step follows is to have a global presence. And that's what is driving the Indian companies towards this. Very, very happy to inform you that 3 of the large Indian tire companies are amongst the top 20-25 global tire companies now.
Okay.
And we see their share is going to be position is going to be further improving in years to come.
Okay, and while this growth is happening, do you also see the Indian government coming to their aid in terms of the right policies? And are these policies right in terms of encouraging these players? And besides that, are there any issues confronting the tire industry at present?
Yes, certainly. I think that's one area where I would say, as an industry association, we feel that the government has not given the tire industry the place and the recognition and the support that it very rightly deserves. For instance, one of the key issues that concerns the tire industry is a very long outstanding demand for correction in the inverted duty structure.
Okay.
Here we are in India in a situation where the customs duty on your principal raw material, that's natural rubber, is now 25%.
Okay.
Earlier until the budget it was 20%, subsequently hiked to 25%, which is perhaps the highest in the world. And the customs duty on finished tires is anywhere between 0% to 8.6% under various preferential and the concessional tariffs by virtue of the trade agreements. So it's a very anomalous situation where you have the raw material duty, the principal raw material duty, almost 3 times that of the finished product, and as a result we are seeing this huge influx of cheap imported tires coming into India, especially dumped from China.
Okay, but this issue has been on for quite some time. Has that not been addressed?
Yes, that's why I said, it's rather unfortunate, if I may say, that this has not received the attention of the government in a manner that it deserves. And for the last many years, both as an industry body and also tire companies, they've been approaching the government, but unfortunately the answer or the solution is still eluding.
So we don't. Does the government not have any anti-dumping norms here?
Well, they do have, and unfortunately again the process is very long and lengthy.
Okay.
We do have anti-dumping duties in place for biased truck tires, but it took almost, if I may say, anywhere between 1.5 to 2 years to have that in place. Once the duties were imposed on the biased tires, then the importers switched to import of the radial truck tires, which is now the emerging major segment, and which is where the companies have invested almost 20-25,000 crores in the last 4-5 years to set up manufacturing capacities in India. So it's very ironical that the industry has made huge investments in capacity creation, both for new projects and also for expansions. But unfortunately, the cheaper imports, or if I may say the dumped imports which are coming into the country, continue to be a matter of serious concern.
Okay, and while it's a concern there's also concern perhaps on the raw material front.
That's right.
But what's the situation within the country in terms of raw material, like prices of rubber which goes into making tires? Has there been a stabilization on that price front?
Well, rubber prices have been stable, if I may say, in the last 3 to 4 years, although they have declined from the previous peak levels that were there in 2011. But even at these prices, which are, if I may say, comparatively lower than the prices that prevailed in the recent years, rubber in India is anywhere between 15 to 20% higher than the compared international prices.
Okay.
So that is a very major concern, that one, the prices are comparatively higher than prevailing internationally, and secondly, more than the price, it's a question of the availability. Rubber today in India is the demand far exceeds the availability, not only for the present but even going forward in the medium and long term future. And as a result, imports are the only, if I may say, way out for the industry.
And that's where
the duty incident impacts the industry very, very severely. So here we are in a situation where the domestic availability of rubber is inadequate. The quality is not up to the mark to meet the requirements, the changing requirements of industry for new quality, new technology of products, that's the radial truck tires and the radial passenger tires. And thirdly, it's the incidence of duty. So all these three together are impacting the domestic tire industry in its operations.
And primarily, where are these sourced from? Is it just Kerala or are they in any other state?
Well, 95% of rubber in India originates from Kerala.
Okay.
Although the government has endeavored to move into the northeast, but unfortunately, considering the potential that exists for rubber cultivation in the northeast, sadly, the production or the capacity creation is just about 20-25%.
Okay.
So there's still a very large untapped, if I may say, resource which has not been exploited in larger national interest.
And what is happening back in Kerala? I mean, is it that the production is coming down, or is the quality getting bad, or what is inherently?
Well, a number of factors are at play in Kerala. First of all, as we know, Kerala land is very scarce.
That's right.
Kerala has probably it's oversaturated on land use and utilization, and that's where we are not seeing a lot of replanting or new planting activity that's happening, mainly because of other pressures that are there on land. You have infrastructure, tourism, a whole lot of other activities which are happening. Secondly, it's a question of a very limited, if I may say, manpower which is now left for skilled operations in the rubber sector. See, tapping, for instance, is a very highly skilled job, but not many people are now coming forward to go in for tapping. So that's another area where there is a lot of skill gap which is there between the older generation of highly skilled tappers and a new generation which is not coming forward. The third, of course, is because of the low prevailing prices. There's not enough of improvements and if I may say, inputs that are going into this sector. So the growers, especially the small growers, are refraining from better cultivation and farming practices, rain gardening, manuring, utilization of better clones, seeds. All that is getting impacted because of a multiplicity of these factors, that land is under pressure, manpower is not there, and the current level of prices are not supporting, the activities as they should have happened in the farm sector.
Okay, so import is one good way of
Well, that's the only way. See, if you look at it, we have enough capacity created within the country for tire manufacturing. Now, a prudent policy says that value addition should take place within the country. So, you have a choice. You have a choice either to import rubber, raw rubber into the country and value add to it within India, or you could also have tires coming into the country and let your own capacity that has got created at such a high investment stay idle, which is, if I may say, what is happening now. I mean, from a level of 95% or 90% plus utilization, industry today is down to about 60-65%. And all this is happening mainly because, one, on the raw material side, the industry is under pressure in terms of adequacy, quality, which is not coming forth, and on the other hand, the finished goods, both tires and the other rubber goods, non-tire rubber goods, are flooding the Indian market.
Okay, just a couple of more questions, Rajiv. Now, coming back to tires we drive on, is radialization of tires getting better?
Yes, in the passenger segment, as we know, it's by and large, radialization has happened fully. Current level of radialization would be about 97-98%, and I think maybe in another 2 or 3 years it would perhaps be 100%. So even the cheapest car today, in India, which rolls out by the OEMs, they are all fitted with radial tires.
Okay.
There is an old fleet of some commercial taxis and commercial vehicles in the passenger segment which are still donning the old bias of cross-ply tires, but by and large it's 100% radialized. On the commercial vehicle segment, truck and bus, although we started off rather a little late compared to the other countries, I must say that India has done remarkably well, and we've reached a level of somewhere like 35% radialization in the commercial vehicle, that's the truck and bus segment. This would have been actually far higher as a percentage had it not been for the slowdown that had happened in the commercial vehicle segment. As we know, radialization normally starts with the OEM, the vehicle manufacturers, who put the radial tires on the new vehicles that are rolled out. But as we saw, the CV segment had virtually nosedived, in the last 4 years, and because of that, the process of radialization got somewhat delayed, but I'm pretty sure now that the numbers are looking up, the production is coming back to the earlier levels, that this would gain momentum further.
Okay, so when you talk about 50,000 crore turnover, does a chunk of it come from radial tires, or is it the
almost the whole of the passenger segment, as I mentioned, is radial.
Okay.
In the truck segment, as I mentioned, with 35% radials, so you could say 1/3 of the CV segment turnover is radials, and 2/3 as of now is bias.
Okay.
But very soon, this ratio could change, and you could have about 45-50% radialization by the year 2017 and 2018.
Okay. Last question is, you talked about an inverted duty structure, you talked about problems in the raw material front. Keeping all this in mind, where do you see the Indian tire industry? How do you see it panning out in the next few years? Do we see a steady growth, or one needs to be a little cautious and the industry needs to be mollycoddled a bit?
Well, everybody is very, very, if I may say, upbeat about future for the Indian economy in general, for the automotive sector in particular, and that's because of a host of factors. One, of course, as an economy we are poised to grow. The government is all out, to make sure that whatever momentum that was lost is not only regained, but it's accelerated even further. A lot of investments are going into infrastructure, into mining, into highways, ports, roads, and we know that once the economy gains traction on these fronts, it's the automotive sector which is the key driver, and that's where if the automotive sector grows, it is but natural that the component industry and the tire industry would also be a part of that growth progress. So if you're talking about a medium to long term outlook, it is indeed positive. It is we expect tire industry to grow almost in sync and almost in the same line as the GDP growth. So if the country grows at about 7 to 8 to 9%, we could expect a similar or perhaps even a double digit growth level for the tire industry in the years to follow.
Okay, wonderful, and good times to come. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
For the latest news and reviews, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook.